So welcome. My name is Derek Mosley. I'm the director of Marquette Law School's Lubar Center for Public Policy Research and Civic Education, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our Get to Know program. For those of you who are new to this type of programming, we started this programming as a way to bring people who affect our lives every day here into the building, so you have an opportunity to actually hear from them personally and also get to ask questions at the end of the program. I don't know if you all are aware of this, but 6,000 people are released from incarceration each year here in the state of Wisconsin. And of that 6,000, 52% of them reoffend. And as a result of that recidivism, the state of Wisconsin pays about $246 million a year for that recidivism. And our guest today wants to combat those stats. For him, it's not only professionally a job, but it's also a little personal. But I want you all right now to join me in welcoming our guest today, the director of the City of Milwaukee's Office of Community Wellness and Safety, Adam Procell. Adam, welcome.
Thank you.
So I guess we're going to start here. You were born in Colorado. And I believe your parents separated when you were young. Is that correct? And so tell me about your parents.
So I'll tell you about my parents. I have a mother and a father. So we'll start with consistently being yelled at for not speaking loud enough, so I apologize.
There we go. They just made it louder for you.
So thank you for whoever's adjusting that. My mother and father were probably some of the most influential people, obviously, in my life. My mother passed away 3 years ago. My father is still integral in who I am as a person. I feel that a lot of the positive things that I do, without realizing them, I can trace back to my father. So just from a foundational standpoint, they were big influencers in my life.
What did your father do?
He is actually the manager of a radio station, so I grew up falling asleep behind his late night jazz show. And so I have an affinity for jazz. And now he runs it mainly with news right now.
Okay. And your mom?
She's passed.
But what does she do?
She was for the park services, and she worked for their MPS in the park services doing the diamonds. If you guys have ever seen people raking, my mom, tiny, raking, even going through cancer. She passed from cancer a couple years ago. And I remember she was in ICU because of the tumor, not to get serious, but just to give you an idea of where my work ethic comes from, a tumor was cutting off her circulation. She was admitted to the ICU. And the first thing out of her mouth was, "Can I get back to work on Monday to rake the fields?" It's like, you need to stop for a second. You can't even breathe. And you're worried about getting back to work to rake the fields.
And so you lived with your father in Colorado Springs.
Correct.
And actually, our paths might have crossed. We didn't know. I was a law student here at Marquette. I interned with the Army JAG Corps as a lawyer at Fort Carson in Colorado Springs. And you actually went to school on the base.
Correct.
How were you a good student?
I was. Honor student. I was in the Young Astronauts program. Never skipped a day of school in my life. I was always in the accelerated classes, math competitions. So no street cred whatsoever when it comes to, I'm going to be in a math competition. Like, all right.
So you, but something happened while you were in Colorado Springs, that a traumatic event happened that had an effect on you.
Yes. And again, not to turn negative, but I had come home from school and I heard pounding on my door, and my girlfriend at the time, her sister, she said John Paul was just killed, and John Paul was my best friend. And I thought, I wanted to say, like, and I might have even said, quit playing or quit joking. Obviously, she's in tears, she's distraught, so I knew she wasn't, but that was just my response, like, quit playing. And obviously she wasn't, and it was a very, as I describe it, something you see in a newspaper that happens in other communities, and it was a complete random. A kid was trying to get closer to Satan, had to kill 3 people, and just happened to see my best friend and shot him in the head. And it was like truly headlines from another community that she was like, well, that'll never happen to me. Well, that never will happen to me. It happens to somebody all the time. So it scared my father because my grades dipped immediately. I started to I didn't realize this, but I started to behave differently. And for those reasons, he said, I have to send you out here to Milwaukee.
Okay, so he sent you to live with your mom here in Milwaukee.
My grandparents.
Your grandparents. What happened when you were here in Milwaukee?
A lot very quickly. A sort of a cliche. I was the new kid in school, and I don't use this as an excuse for any of my actions, but I gravitated towards anybody that would sort of accept me. And I always think about the Statue of Liberty and the tablet, and we'll accept your poor, your huddled masses. The other group that also shares that same philosophy are the friends your parents don't want you to associate with. Like, we'll accept you. And out of fear of feeling alone, again, no excuse, I gravitated towards those that my parents didn't want me to associate with.
And as a result of that, there was a circumstance where you were like the youngest person in a gang here in Milwaukee, correct? And as a result of that involvement in the gang, someone was killed.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that, or you feel comfortable telling us about it?
Yes, and there's no I'll ever feel comfortable about talking, but in just trying to be transparent with who I am, what leads me to this work, my understanding, I try to just be honest. And it's tough, right? And I don't think a lot of people in here are tone deaf to my appointment and the comments that are always in that thread of social media. And I've read them against the advice of Shannon Ross back there. And it's tough to walk into a room when every single person, or most people, know the worst thing you've ever done as a human being. There's an immediate power imbalance. Like, humor me. Think of the worst thing you've ever done as a human being. Now, every place you go, from the grocery store to the drive-in to this room, everybody knows that one thing that you are least proud of in your entire life and how that would make you feel. And I get that. Those are my choices. I made that decision. I hurt somebody. I need to reap what I sown. So I'm understanding of that. But it's tough because we all make mistakes, some obviously more than others. So that to preface, there is no excuse for my actions. I was in a gang and was told by the gang leader, these rival gang members aren't allowed to be here. An order was given, and myself and another individual, we shot at human beings, and unfortunately Robert did not survive. And it's tough. I mean, to this day, and I always try to say his name, Robert, instead of him or victim, because he had a name. He was a human. And I never want people to lose sight of the fact that I will never lose sight of my actions. And obviously I was...
How old were you then?
This was 3 days after I turned 15.
Okay. And then so you were waived into adult court, tried in adult court, and then you were incarcerated as a result of this.
Correct.
And what happened while you were incarcerated? What was your experience as such a young person there in this system?
It was not a pleasant place to grow up, which seems like the stupidest thing you'll probably hear all day. To be 5 foot, 100 pounds, the youngest person in the entire adult prison system, I felt that I had to act out. Again, not an excuse for my behavior, but I didn't want to become a victim because everybody was stronger, bigger, wiser than myself. And so I had to learn how to read people really well because I couldn't fight my way out of situations. And there's always an answer for misbehavior in prison, and oftentimes it's solitary confinement. And
And you spent time in solitary.
Yep, 4 consecutive years. You really get, if you want to know yourself, go spend 4 years in your bathroom by yourself, and you will come to either hate yourself or be like, oof, we got some work to do, or I'm awesome. I doubt it'll be the latter, but maybe.
But you took part, I read somewhere, you took part in the victim impact panel, and that victim impact panel had an effect on your life. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I would not be sitting here today if it were not for victim impact. And I know there's some people in the room that victim impact is especially important to Marquette also. And just brief.
So I should probably say what victim impact is.
Yeah, so it's sort of in the lane of restorative justice. And in this particular, they can be different. In the victim impact program I was involved with, it was a 4-month program. Each week they'd bring a victim of a crime, starting with a property crime, burglary, armed robbery, assault, sexual assault. So just sort of progressed to the last week. It was an individual that came in, didn't say anything, put up a big poster of a young lady and started to describe how she was murdered. And as he was describing it, I realized like I was on the tier with the guy who killed his daughter. And it was the first time in my life that I saw both sides.
Correct.
And it's tough. And I met with him yesterday. I was like, this dude tried to make me cry like 6 different times.
That was not my intent. But, and so as a result of that victim impact panel, what changed in you?
It's not that I didn't understand the harm that I had done, but I've never seen it in real time. To see that those tears, that agony in that father's voice, and then to understand and see the person on the other side who didn't seem to, excuse my language, give a shit. And I was like, that's wild. And so, like, I never wanted to be the guy who didn't care. And so,
And you had received a letter from Robert's father, is that correct?
correct.
Tell me about that.
And the reason why I said I wouldn't be here is because I was doing all these positive things and I was begging God to not let me wake up in the morning because the guilt was deafening.
But a chaplain said something to you when you said that.
Yeah, she. You ever had a chaplain yell at you? That's an interesting experience. Like, well, that seems contrary to what God teaches. Because she was like, "Who the hell do you think you are?" I was like, I don't know. I thought I knew until you were screaming at me. And she said, if Jesus can forgive you, who do you think that you are that you can't forgive yourself? And it was such a mind-blowing concept. And I appreciate anybody's faith background, but for me, I'm a Christian, so Jesus is first and foremost important in my life. So to me, that resonated. I was like, gosh, what do you say to something like that? Bless you. And so, yeah, it kind of, it changed things for a while. And I would love to lie to you right now and say that I took heed to that. And I think for a while I did. But I think stepping into this role, as I talked about everybody knowing the worst thing you've ever done, and I feel like I've been emotional more this last month because a lot of those comments, it's not the comments that bother me. I said those same comments to the mayor. And so it's bringing all that guilt back up, like to the service, and knowing that, like the media, they came up to me today, like, we want to talk to you about the violence over the weekend. It's like, I promise you I'm giving every single thing I have. Like, I am giving you every single ounce of strength a human being can give to try to prevent the violence over the weekend. We don't have all the answers. Nobody does. But yet every single time I hear that, a siren outside my window, I'm like, gosh, is somebody just shot? Like, I'm taking all that upon myself. It's like, because at some point, 3 days after I turned 15, because of my actions, somebody heard sirens. And so it's hard not to internalize. So I think the part that I didn't accept from this role, I'm sure we'll get into some of this, I didn't expect that. Because, like, I'm taking on the weight of every single shooting, every single siren that I hear, and then it all superimposes onto my own guilt that I don't deserve to be alive, much less in this role.
So you received a letter from Robert's father.
Didn't even answer the question.
No, it's okay, no. And tell me what that felt like. Did it surprise you?
It did. Time stopped. And for those that have any touch with the carceral system, if you ever have the opportunity to write somebody, to impact somebody's life, you will never understand how important it is for somebody to get a letter to know that you took time out of your life to show them that they mattered. So I encourage you, if you know anybody, write to them. You will bring a smile and a feeling of I matter on a level you will never understand. So when my name was checked for me, I was like, yes, somebody, I didn't say this, but like somebody cares about me. Because prison is a very lonely place. And I wanted this letter oddly to tell me that he hoped that I died in prison. That's what my guilt wanted to hear. But the first line was, thank you for what you're doing in my son's name. A couple of days later, I got a letter from his grandmother, Robert's grandmother. And she was like, can we send you some books? Like, how can we help you keep other kids like ours from ending up like ours. And it completely shifted my prayer from God, please take me to God, please help me get through to more youth.
And ultimately, in 2018, you were paroled.
Correct.
And in fact, Robert's father actually came in your benefit, on your behalf, to be paroled. Is that correct?
Yes, I don't think I'd be sitting here if it were not for him year after year advocating for my release, saying all this work that he's done behind bars to try to safeten our streets. Imagine what he could do if you were free. And he just year after year just kept, to the point almost he was begging for them to give me another chance.
And what was the first thing you did when you were released? I know when you talk to young people and you ask them, they're always, what's the first thing, what are you going to eat? What was the first thing?
Yeah, stupidest question ever. or the best, I don't know.
But what was the first thing you did upon your release?
And that's unusual. It's odd because during a quarter century in prison, you see a lot of people come back and they would always remember the first thing that they've ever done when they got out. And so I just cataloged that the first thing you do is important. And so I wanted my first thing to be meaningful. And so my mom and my sister came to pick me up from Oak Hill. And they're like, should we bring you some donuts? Should we bring you some food? Do you want a cell phone? I was like, I don't want any of that. Just bring 2 flowers. And I don't want to stop anywhere. And I want to go right back to the scene of the crime. And we did. And I didn't know whose neighborhood it was at that point. So I felt a little sketchy. And we got there. It was a sunny day. I got out, didn't say anything to anybody. I walked down this driveway, and I literally got on my knees in this driveway where I thought Robert took his last breath. And the reason is why this is important. I said, I'm sorry to him. And this is something that people don't understand is when my victim's father wrote me and I wrote him back, I said, I will never tell you that I'm sorry. Which sounds like a terrible thing to say. But you say sorry if I dent your car or I spill this glass of water. You don't say I'm sorry for taking your son's life. What I will do is I will show you with my actions until I have not a single breath left in my body that I regret that moment. And then you will see that I regret that moment. But I will never tell you with my words that I'm sorry. But to Robert, he's not here. He knows what's in my heart. And so I laid it. I said, I'm sorry. I was like, you know what's in my heart. And you know what we have to do. I didn't know what I had to do, but I just knew I was going to do everything I could to try to prevent that from ever happening again. So then I went to church and just thanked God for a second chance. And then I gave the second flower to my grandmother when I saw her.
So you're released, but you don't have a job. So what's your first job after your release?
And this is where this is going to be a very odd thing to hear. I thank my parole agent because she had the wherewithal to understand that everybody is different. And a lot of agents try to push people into a job immediately. And she had said, you've been in prison your whole entire life. Like, you just need to breathe. You had a pager when you got arrested. Go ahead and laugh. I'm old. She's like, that there wasn't no internet. It's like, just take a couple of months. You have housing. You have funds that you'd saved over the years. Just understand what life means. And I attribute her understanding of what I needed at that particular time. And do I think I would have been fine if she would have said, I need to go get a job wherever? I would have did it. And I probably would have been okay. Just the fact that she saw my individual needs, I'd done all these positive things to say, hey, just take some time. But at the same time, because I did interview for a job while I was still incarcerated for Partners in Hope, and they're a faith-based prisoner reintegration organization. So I started to volunteer with them right away. And then eventually it got to the point where I need to do this full time. They created a position for me. So it's kind of like work, not work, right away.
And so while you're working with Partners at Hope, you actually used your experience to write legislation. In fact, you wrote Act 233. Can you tell us what Act 233 is?
Yes, and well, it's often attributed to me, and I feel like I did do a lot of work. I view it as a collective. I see a lot of people in this room that helped me get to that point. And essentially, at its core, Act 233 legislates collaboration. And knowing that in Milwaukee, there's a lot of great reentry organizations doing a lot of positive things, but they're all disjointed. And they're all, I need to hit my metrics so I can show success, which disincentivizes collaboration. So I ended up going to the Capitol testifying. I was asked to testify about second chance hiring. I chose to be a rebel and not talk at all about second chance hiring, stating that we can give somebody the best job possible, but if we don't help them get there with transportation, if we don't get their critical identification documents to get a direct bank account, the job doesn't matter. And it was in the hearing where the chairman of the corrections committee said, send me everything that you have. I did. They literally turned my one-pager into legislative form. And then last year, Governor Evers, they called us up, Shannon and I. He said, we're going to sign your bill into law, and we want you to come witness it. We did. And one of the best pictures, I'm glad I have the picture because it seems surreal, of Governor Evers signing it and then handing me the pen.
Look at that pen, Dean.
Well, I talk about the pen is mightier than the sword. And that's like a thing in prison, too. People are like, you can't fight your way out of prison, but you can write, you can complain, you can write lawsuits. And so that's sort of what I mean by that. But it's, when we talk about impact, and I see there's a elected official right here and understanding, if you're truly trying to enact long-term change, it requires a pen. And I took that pen that same week into Racine Correctional and let the gentleman just sign something with it. It may seem kind of cheesy, but the reason I did that is so often in prison, you're relegated to thinking, I'm just going to get out and work in some factory. And that's all that society is going to let me do. And I want them to see, like, this is our pen. Like, everything is on the table. If you work, if you grind, if you let your mind think, everything is possible. Imagine what you can do way better than I'm doing. And so I think it meant hope.
You co-founded an organization called The Paradigm Shift with Shannon. Shannon, could you stand up for a second? Shannon Ross. Yeah. So you co-founded an organization with Shannon Ross called The Paradigm Shift. What is The Paradigm Shift? First of all, before we get to that, how did you meet Shannon?
Worst moment of my life. Best moment of his life. You don't have a mic, so please don't talk. It's very disrespectful.
Yeah.
I kind of joke that, so I'm the CEO of another organization called Make Him Look Bad. So every opportunity, because he will take the opportunity, so I have to use all my opportunities because he's pretty clever. He and I actually met on a youth panel inside of Oak Hill Correctional Institution. And he had notes. Think about this. He's speaking to kids and he had notes. Forgot them on the table. So in mid-conversation, talking to this group of kids, hold on, let me go get these notes. I was like, oh my God, who is this guy? If I'd have known this would be my best friend, 15 years later, I'd have been like, oh my God, I have to make some serious life changes. But he's one of the most honest and sincere, hardworking people I've ever met. And it was after that we started to walk the track. And if you've ever been in prison, like that's where all the good ideas happen. You just walk the track because you have nothing else to do. And we talked about like what we would like to do. And he was released 2 years after me. He had started a nonprofit. Actually, he paid me to give him a shout out. So he has flyers for his upcoming events. Right? So please see him afterwards. Here's his annual Correcting the Narrative event. And he hit the ground running. And so we created a paradigm shift to try to get away from the nonprofit space because, no disrespect to all the nonprofit touch points in here, boards slow you down. And a lot of the ideas Shannon and I have, whether it's jumping out of planes with cops or driving an ambulance this last weekend to Minnesota.
We're going to talk about that.
So
we're going to talk. I can't believe that story.
Yeah, we need to find different ways to do the work and not be bogged down by boards. So we created a for-profit, which our tagline is worst for-profit ever, because we make no money. But it allows us to be very nimble and just take on individual projects to help society understand how to better interact with those with criminal records.
Now, you mentioned some things that you've done with the Paradigm Shift. One of them had to do with, and I don't know if it was with the Paradigm Shift, but you mentioned something about the police academy and your involvement with the police academy. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, this is actually Partners in Hope, not I like you add the word "the" in front of paradigm shift. Like, I don't know where that came from, Shannon, but like the paradigm shift, that's a new thing. But no, with Partners in Hope, and I don't know why God puts you in certain spaces, but I didn't like the police for much of my life. And of course, then God said, you know what, your sister's gonna marry a cop. And that was the first joke. And then he's like, you know what, the year you get out, that's gonna be the year he graduates the police academy, and you're gonna go to his graduation. After serving a quarter century in prison, you're gonna be in a room with 300 cops. I'm like, oh, that's just great. Appreciate it. And then 2020 happened, George Floyd, and obviously we knew or know what happened after that. And I had an idea to go to the police academy, because the way my brain works is if we have an issue with how police treat people, go to where they're trained. And so I got permission to go undercover, oddly, into the police academy. They gave me a gold shield. I was like, this is crazy. I was Lieutenant Mark Smith from Detroit, and I presented to the entire 2020 class as if I was an officer. And I snuck out during lunch after the presentation, went to a cemetery where an officer who had been murdered was buried. They drove all 84 recruits out, and I put on a prison jumpsuit because I needed them to understand you need to care about what happens to people after those handcuffs come off, because we need to see each other as human. And I was released the same year the individual who murdered the officer was. We played basketball together. He got out, he had no excuse for his actions and behaviors, but he went right back to what he knew because he wasn't afforded the opportunity to be something other than what he was yesterday. No excuse. And that's why officers need to care, because if he had opportunities, this officer might still be there for his family. That turned into role reversing traffic stops. And so a lot of these police shootings happen at traffic stops. So I went to a junkyard, got a truck, cut it in half, brought it back to our offices. And then those that get out of prison, they become the officers. They get a belt with a gun, a fake gun that shoots air. And then the officers at the police academy, they're the drivers. And so we do these actual live traffic stops to help each side understand how quickly it can escalate if you just don't see the other person as human. And our guys will get shot all the time. And it's not that we're sadists and want that to happen, but we want them to understand that's how quickly it can escalate. And we want the officers to understand that if you're pulling somebody over who is on supervision, you talk to them like they're a piece of trash, they're going to go to prison for the rest of their life, they might take your life. So how about talk to them with a little bit of respect? And so it works both ways. So that's some of the work that we've done.
And then you mentioned that you did an event where you took officers and offenders and you guys jumped out an airplane.
Yeah, so I like seemingly mundane ideas. I laugh because when I first brought it up, people just laughed at me like, you're an idiot. And side note, if you ever say an idea to somebody and they say you're an idiot, it might be the best idea you've ever come up with. But there's actually a very real reason why I wanted to do this. I wanted to identify a space where it didn't matter if you had an inmate number or a badge number. And I realized that there is a place that's just 10,000 feet in the air. And so we took 10 officers and 10 formerly incarcerated people, put them in a plane together. So each plane, it takes about 20 minutes to get up to altitude. There's one cop, one person who has been formerly incarcerated. And when that door opens and like the plane shakes, you don't care that that person next to you is a cop or has been in prison. And if you can trick yourself or show yourself in that one moment that it doesn't matter, that means you can prove to yourself 10,000 feet below, you can treat that person as a human. So then we jumped out of the plane. I did jump out in a suit because I don't know. And my pocket square stayed in place. So that was the most important part of the whole event. But when we hit the ground and you could see an officer and someone that was formerly incarcerated laugh and hug after the cameras went away, it's like that's why we did this, because too often those sides are told to hate each other. And again, we just have to find these little moments in time where we can show each other, hey, we're not all that different, right? And I think so often in society these days is you're on the left, you're on the right, you're defund the police, you're BLM, we're just not the same. It's like we're a lot more similar than we are different. We've just lost sight of that. So
last week we had Chief Aaron Lipsky from the fire department, as our get-to-know guest. And you have a connection with him just recently. Tell us about that connection with Chief Lipsky, and you and Shannon, I think, took a trip.
So it was the first time I was ever told no, because I asked for a hook and ladder. So those big fire trucks. And he said, no, I will not give you one of those, but I will give you an ambulance. And it started from one of our Recipe for Change dinners that we might talk to. But Shannon and I, we had an idea that so often those that get out of prison are in these communities that don't have access or easy access to resources. So like, can we create like a mobile office where we can take the resources to you? And so just like an ambulance triages life-saving measures when a shooting might happen, we want to triage reentry barriers. And so Chief Lipsky gave us an ambulance, and we're converting it, we're calling it MORE, so the Mobile Office of Reentry Education. We partnered with UW's geospatial unit to create heat maps for zip codes that have the highest concentrated areas of those on supervision using data from the Department of Corrections. And unfortunately, the only place that could, within our budget, retrofit this ambulance was 5 hours away in Minnesota. So this last weekend, Shannon and I had to drive this ambulance 5.5 hours that had been sitting in a lot for the last year. So I'm like, chief mechanic guy, please don't let us get stuck 3 or 4 hours away. And we took shifts driving this huge ambulance that there was a hole in the cab, so the exhaust was coming through. So I was like, wow, this is just great. I'm gonna pass out. Like, Shannon, like I can't breathe here. So all the windows are down, and we switched. And as I'm behind him, this is such a stupid story. How he and I are alive, I don't know. So if you want to know us, ask us soon, because we're not long for this world. There's no license plate on the ambulance. I'm like, we get pulled over right now. Like, what do we even say? Like, we're in this ambulance that has the decals removed for legal reasons. Like, I swear, officer, you got 2 guys that have been spent 40 years in prison. Like, I swear the fire chief gave us this ambulance. So, yeah, God, put your hands behind your back, man. Like, there's no way I'm sitting here if we get pulled over. So I'm like, well, thank you. Shannon's like, I'm just gonna pretend like it's not gonna happen. I was like, that's your plan? You're just gonna pretend like it's not gonna happen? And he was like, well, you have a better idea? I was like, good point. All right.
Funny story is Chief Lipsky's mom's right there at Start Real.
Okay. He is one of the best people I know.
So you mentioned it quickly. I met you and Shannon through your community dinners. You had, what you call Recipe for Change?
Recipe for Change.
And you would bring people together who normally wouldn't interact together. So I know I was there. So yeah, the judge, the mayor was there, and there was other community members there. What was your purpose behind these Recipe for Change dinners?
I think going back to my last comment about we're much more similar than we are different. Food is always an equalizer. And when I was in prison, I took 7 years of culinary training. So I'm a trained chef. And I don't know why that was so funny, but like, I can cook.
But I'll let you know that he actually was the best wedding cake maker at Oshkosh.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, I was. So that you could have laughed at. It's like, you know how to make wedding cakes? But we had an idea that it actually came from, if anybody knows Bill Lipscomb, trying to give a good retirement gift. And we're like, we don't want to just buy in golf clubs or something. So we decided to cook a meal and bring some people together that we knew but don't necessarily talk to one another. We're like, hey, this is kind of interesting to bring people together. And we're like, okay, how can we double down on that? And so we're like, we'll use the Hunger Task Force's Master Chef Kitchen and just have people come and become my sous chefs and bring people, force them. And it's funny, there's some people in this room like, I will burn water. They'll come in a pantsuit. I'm looking at some people right now that have been to some of these. To see a judge in a pantsuit
Hey, leave me out of this.
fry egg rolls. And then we'll have a very meaningful conversation with one another. And then oddly, and this is, I don't see him in here, but John Chisholm's idea, he was like, let us all help do dishes together. And it created this bond where we didn't expect. And when we talk about bringing people, so there's people who have committed murder, Supreme Court justice, a mother whose son who was a cop was murdered, somebody who was molested, police chief, fire chief, youth leaders, Pastor Locke from the Milwaukee Bucks. There's different people for different dinners with different themes. And originally we tried to pick a theme, so each food would have a symbolic sort of purpose to that meal, and that got way too complicated.
Yes.
So then I was like, whatever I see in the grocery store, that's what we're cooking. Nope, you guys don't know this, but I was just literally last day, that's on sale, so let's do that.
Because you funded these yourself.
Yeah, initially, and then we got a grant for the last year.
So you're not a stranger to the law school, because I know that you work with Mary Trigiano's class, restorative justice class, as well as the Andrew Center here. But you also teach a class for the undergrad. Tell me about it.
So yes, and I see my co-professor up there, Darren. We had a stupid idea. Like, what if we created a course on reentry and took Marquette students into a prison to learn with 10 incarcerated students? And this guy, he went...
Derek, could you stand, please?
Yep. I have to embarrass you. And eventually they got approved with some other phenomenal work that they're doing. And so we literally on this whiteboard that nobody else would probably recognize any of these symbols. He has terrible handwriting. I have very nice handwriting, Darren.
Perfect.
And came up with this curriculum, had the ability to bring some very cool people within this space from law enforcement, the justice system, to come in as guest speakers. And so we bring 10 Marquette students who have never had a touch on the justice system into a prison to learn with 10 incarcerated students for a whole semester. And it was shocking the quickness of which community is created and the amount of tears that are shed. And he always would say is he's never had a class where he would have to force students to leave. And it's like 8:30 on a Tuesday night in a prison. And he has to guys, they're gonna lock us in here if we don't leave. But people did not want to disengage from that community. So it's probably one of the cooler things I've ever been a part of.
So let's talk about your current job as the Director of Community Wellness and Safety. What do you think so far?
I don't even know how to answer that question, my friend. I think our city is in trouble. I don't know that we fully grasp how deep it goes, our inability to resolve, at the end of the day, resolve conflict without violence. And I think it starts in the home. I think we've lost a sense of accountability from a parental. I think parent has somehow become a noun instead of a verb, which I don't know if people get the nuance. I think parent needs to be a verb. It is not a noun, and I get how words work. But we've lost sight of parents need to hold their children accountable. And in large part, parents in years past haven't been held accountable as well. And it has created this ecosystem where, and there's so many different factors. There's no one factor I can point to, but just this last weekend, just seeing how much violence, how much retaliatory violence.
And that's what you try to combat, right?
Correct.
So how many people are part of this office?
So we have a staff of 13 that are doing various things, and then our office supports some violence interrupters and some other programs.
So when you say violence interrupters, what are violence interrupters?
So most of you guys will probably know either 4 and 4 Life or Promise Keepers or the Critical Response Team. Raise your hand if you've heard of any one of those 3 groups. Most people. And a lot of people say the people with the orange shirts. And there's different groups, right? There's 7 violence interrupted, there's 7 outreach, and there's 4 hospital staff. And it can look a few different ways. But in the shortest version, if an incident happens, a shooting happens, a homicide happens, we'll get a referral from the Milwaukee Police Department because we partner with them. And we'll try to go to the scene, and sort of a couple things happen at once. We'll try to connect with the family and loved ones. We'll offer trauma support because people who have seen or experienced violence, they're much more likely to be a part of violence in the future. Hurt people. And we have different programs, different grants that will allow for 10 therapy sessions for somebody who's just been impacted by violence. So there's a lot of different ways that can look with clinicians and healers. And then sort of on the more dangerous side of, well, that's dangerous too. But even more dangerous is, okay, who shot who? What were his associates? do we know as associates? So a lot of these violence interrupters, they have touch points in the street. They have come from the street. A lot of them are formerly incarcerated like myself. And now they're trying to do everything that they can to prevent what they once did from happening again. And so these are some of the bravest people that I know. They essentially run towards the conflict. So if we identify, is there a possibility of retaliation? Let's go try to get a hold of his guys. If we get a hold of his guys, his friends or hers, hey, what's going on? Like, what can we do? Let's talk. Let's try to mitigate you from going to do something that we're all going to regret. And the tension in those spaces and the neighborhoods, the time of day, and this is what really angers me when people try to minimize these individuals and what they do, is the strength and courage it takes to go to the worst part of what you may consider a bad neighborhood at the scariest time. They're there. They don't have a bulletproof vest. They don't have a gun. But they're trying to keep our city safe. Sometimes when they're ridiculed, when they're like, what are they doing besides handing out T-shirts? Like, I take issue with that because they are risking their life to try to mitigate conflict from arising again. But yet you'll hear so many shootings will happen, and what are you doing about it? And it's like, man, if you only saw what these men and women do, it's amazing.
For $20 an hour, no benefit.
Yeah, a lot of them get $20 an hour for 20 hours a week and no benefits. There's a select few that do get paid full-time. I'm trying to get all of them, because if you're risking your life, you should be paid full-time. You should have the opportunity to have an advancement in your career. And it just isn't happening right now, and it's a shame.
What's your vision for this office?
The vision, it's a long one. And at the end of the day, if anybody's ever heard collective impact, like, I don't want to be a service provider. I don't feel my office should be providing services per se. I want to be that neutral body, much like the CJC, where we're convening all these different partners. So whether it's the fire department working with MPS, whether it's the sheriff's department working with the park system. I mean, so many of these partners don't work with one another, going back to that siloed situation. Because there's a lot of great ideas. So much of everybody knows what's happening with the federal government. So many of these initiatives, programs are being cut. So now more than ever, we have to find a way to leverage what each one of us has for each other and not worry about if they look good, that means we don't look good and we're not going to get the funding from whatever philanthropic organization. We have to find a way to get out of that mindset. And so I've identified 6 areas of priority for me in our office, and it's early childhood intervention, and we were talking about this yesterday. My mind immediately understands that the more kids we can get into school or connect to healthcare or good food, that is violence prevention. Because if you look at the statistics as people age, commonalities from those who commit violence, it's a lack of a lot of these things on the front end. And we always say, it's too expensive. We only have so many dollars. Like, yeah, but we're going to pay at some point, not only with incarcerating somebody for $50,000 a year, but what about the creation of a victim when someone gets shot or killed? And that triggers a $2 million price tag just for that homicide, irrespective of what it's going to cost to incarcerate that person for the rest of their life. On top of the tears that family's going to cry. We're willing to pay that, but we won't pay for this awesome program or this ability to connect kids early on to mentorship. And that leads into the second pillar of intervention and diversion. So if a kid starts to walk down a path that we don't like or scares us, how can we intervene? If they're getting into trouble, can we divert them from a criminal past that's so hard to get out of? The space violence interruption, that's what everybody thinks of my office, and people still sometimes call it the Office of Violence Prevention. That's no longer what our office is called, but that's what a lot of people think this office is. And so most of our contracts are tied up into that space. Almost simultaneously, because if something happens, then victim services, that's my 4th pillar. Victims are created. And we have to find a way to help those who have been impacted get through it, not hurt somebody else, because again, data shows hurt people from a younger age. This is the part that probably, I hate to say this phrase, grinds my gears. It's such a stupid phrase. But the fact that reentry has never been a part of this office or this space is mind-boggling to me, because people just don't wake up and say, you know, I'm going to go commit a crime today and make the community less safe. Odds are, as you said when you opened, right, 50% of people getting out of prison go back. And like it's an alarming number. And in certain areas, that number is even higher. So we can find a way to provide opportunities so they don't have to. By default, you make the community safer. And then the last area is community and police relations. And that goes to a lot of the work that I've been doing. A lot of communities feel a distrust with the police. I don't think we can get to a place of safety without a robust police force and one that is culturally competent and does interact with the formerly incarcerated, does interact with the community. So I feel those are those areas that I want my office to focus on.
Ben? So, the last couple of our get-to-knows, I've run a little long, and so I've made a point now that I am going to stop at this point and open it up for any questions from the audience for Adam. We're going to bring a microphone to you.
Please feel free to ask me very easy questions.
Thank you. I'm curious how old you were when you were incarcerated.
15.
15 years old. And what was the term?
Life plus 25.
You were in there for 11 years.
No. The term, well, I served 23 years. The sentence was life plus 25 years with the possibility of parole.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Adam? Coming up to you.
I see you way back there. Just
My law school classmate.
so. Hello, and nice to see you, Adam. Nice to see you, Derek. Just one thing, because you're working with, I know, so many different populations, and Derek started out talking about 52% of the population recidivates. We have the increased recidivism rates, and I know that you've been traveling to other states and to other countries. Have you picked up information that we should be doing here in Wisconsin? Because, I mean, to say there's 52% of a recidivism rate, I would argue with that somewhat, because it's how do we define recidivism? People going back in, is it on what we consider technical violations, new crimes? Are we setting people up to fail? I mean, Wisconsin is a rural state. We let people out with no place to live, no transportation, no job, and we say, hey, good luck to you. And by the way, you also have trauma, adult addiction issues that we decide to only take care of in the criminal justice system, mental health issues that we only decide to take care of in the criminal justice system. And then we're like, but look at our recidivism rates are so high. Are you picking up information or getting information that would help us to really focus on actually helping individuals so that they have the capabilities of staying out of the criminal justice system?
Good question. And actually, yes. And it's disheartening because, as you alluded to, we've traveled to, I think, 4 countries over the last couple of years to visit 5 countries for the last couple of years to visit their justice system. And there's been one fundamental commonality, or 2 actually. Most of them don't have a very robust reentry process, which sounds terrible. But their recidivism, at least the numbers that they're giving us, are much better than ours. So like, well, how is that? And what we found is, and I'll tell a very, very quick story. We were in Germany, and we were in a women's prison. And we were taking a tour, and this name tag, for anybody who's ever been in this prison system, a lot of times it's a number. This name tag said, Dr., I'll just say Jane Doe. And I was like, doctor? And it was the look on the warden's face, or deputy warden's face, who was giving us the term, like, yeah, you idiot, just because she made a mistake doesn't mean we take away who she is. And I was like, dang, like, we would never do that here.
Yeah.
And the root of it is culture. We were just in Brazil a month ago visiting a prison that doesn't have any guards, which is shocking. Like to see the inmates with that double door where the inmate is closing this door, locking this door to let this inmate unlock and lock this door. Like, well, how does that work? They're allowed, the staff there, not guards, they're allowed to hug each other. You'll go to segregation if you hug a guard here in Wisconsin. But what that creates is this humanization of self. Because if I see you seeing me as human, I can then act like a human. So don't be surprised, like if you don't treat me like a human, I don't act like a human. And so it's tough when I say it's disheartening is culturally for a lot of these countries, it's different. Like you can't CCAP somebody in Germany to know that they've been in prison. And we found that because we were taking a tour and ladies were covering their faces. Like, why are they covering their faces? And the woman said, because if you don't physically see them in prison, you will never know that they were in prison. That's just like a mind-blowing concept. So when you get out and you try to get a job, like there's nobody that says, hey, you were in prison for the last 20 years unless I tell you. So culturally, we have to find a way to see people as human. Until we do, as hard as we work to try to create programs that help people, it's I don't want to say it's for naught, because I do feel it's helping. But until we can understand that we need to shift the culture and how we see people who have made mistakes, and that's why Shannon's correcting the narrative, helping people understand the narrative is so important, nothing's going to change on a grand scale.
Yeah.
Sorry. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I have so many questions, but I know Derek will only let me ask one.
Pick your
I'll try to make it a good one. So you started comments about the office, talking about the ecosystem and talking about, we're in trouble here in Milwaukee. And I guess I'd like for you to give a little bit more context to that, because I'm not sure that we as a community fully understand and appreciate that. It always feels distant. It always feels like somebody else. It always feels like. But we know, especially those who have worked in restorative justice, what impacts one impacts all of us, even though we have the ability to distance ourselves. So if you could give a little bit more context to that, that would really be helpful, because I think that you're seeing it from several different lenses, and it probably includes a lens that many of us don't see.
So last week, I don't know if anybody here attended the gun violence summit at the Baird Center, and I moderated 2 panels, and the audience were students in Milwaukee from multiple high schools. And I asked a question, and this is what I mean exactly. So first of all, thank you for that question. I said, in the last month, how many of you have heard gunshots outside your window? I would say 95% of the hands were raised. These are kids from like 5 different high schools. To have almost every single student raise their hand saying, I've heard gunshots in this last month. That is not normal. And if we don't understand how that's impacting a human being at that age, we're in even more trouble. And that goes to one of my favorite sayings is, your choices are like voices, they'll speak for you. We can say all day long out of our mouth that we want a safer community, right? But at the end of the day, we are where we're at. And so when I talked about parents, and to me, I could come up with the best ideas on the face of this planet. And I think it can help our community, but to me, the change and the catalyst needs to come from the community out. And until the community at some point says enough, and I'm not talking about after some kid gets shot, like there was over the weekend, and there's a press conference and there's balloons raised, because that's going to happen repeatedly. To me, that's not saying enough. I believe every single person who has shot somebody this year in Milwaukee has somebody in their life that loves them. They may not necessarily know it, and I'm not saying it's their fault, but I feel every single person who has shot somebody had the opportunity to have one person in their life be like, hey, are you okay? Like, what are you going through? And that's not okay. And that whole, it takes a village, like the being on Miss Susie's lawn or something, just going, hey, get off my lawn, but like, what does your mom want to do for dinner? Like, we've lost sight of that community. And until the community is fed up, I firmly believe we're in trouble, because, we're going to do our part, the police department's going to do their part, the mayor's office is going to do their part, but until the community themselves says, and I'll take a step back before I answer this, the first thing I put on my business card when I first got my business card was, don't ask for change, be the change. We're always wanting somebody else to fix it for us. And I get some of us don't have the capability to fix it ourselves, and so need help. But the community has much more power than I think they even realize. And until they say enough, we're all just trying to apply Band-Aids to cure cancer.
Hi, congrats on your position.
Thank you.
And I want to know what your favorite thing about Milwaukee is.
My favorite thing about Milwaukee, I was not expecting that question.
That's Shannon. That's shit. Definitely not Shannon.
Least favorite thing Milwaukee. I would say, that's a really good question. You think that'd be really easy?
Yes, sir.
I can only, I guess, speak from what makes me happy, and that's about to change. So I live on 3rd and Harrison, so by the south side. One of the best purchases I've ever purchased was a bike, like a street bike, and I ride that all the way down Lakeshore Drive to the end of the treatment plant and back. So it's about 17 miles before work each day. And there's something about riding along the water that just somehow grounds me. Now with the weather being cold, I'm soft, so it's too cold to do it. So, what's that?
That's not too cold.
Well, it's cold when you got a bald head. When you got your head it's cold fast.
So probably just having access to water is probably my favorite thing in Milwaukee.
I think we have time for one more.
Okay,
You got it?
I'd like to know more about the ambulance that you're
Almost died in. Okay.
well, there are a lot of things going on in the community. I'm looking at an issue in 53206 where a neighborhood grocery store has a lot of people loitering, doing drugs, drinking, all kinds of illegal parking, and it's a real issue that we're dealing with in the community. So we're having Safe and Sound, we're doing pop-up. Is this the kind of activity that the ambulance would support?
Absolutely. So anytime we can find another group, again, collaboration, right? If Safe and Sound is partnering with a different organization and bringing more people, if we're doing a community pop-up and we can bring an ambulance that will support those that have been formerly incarcerated, absolutely. Because we don't want to just be driving around just by ourselves, not because we're lonely, but again, we have to start pooling resources because we know a lot of people who are getting out of prison that might need our resources, might need their resources as well. And shout out, I just saw my boss, Nick Desiato, out there. So appreciate you, buddy, for hiring me. So absolutely is the short answer.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming here and joining us today. I also want to thank you, Adam, for your vulnerability and your sharing your story and where you've come and where you are right now. So could we all give Adam Procell a round of applause?
Thank you.